Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you my favourite results from the Nodevember challenge that have been shared by the community throughout the last month. As well as this, we'll be talking about some of the techniques used to achieve these results, and I'll also be giving out some free demonstration files that can be downloaded from the link in the description. If you don't know what Nodevember is, for every day of the month a prompt is provided, and members of the community try to create a result using only nodes and basic primitives. A great place to keep track of the results is on Twitter under the Nodevember hashtag. This is also where you will find the official account for the event, organised by Jonas Deschel and Luca Rude. More information can be found on the official site at nodevember.io. There are far too many results to show them all in this video, so feel free to link others in the comments if there are any that you want to share. Firstly, let's take a look at the work of Simon Thomas, who is undoubtedly my favourite node artist. There's a great visual variety here, and you can quite clearly tell that a lot of them start from a basic sphere, although in the case of the microbe this is a lot harder to visualize. What makes this even more impressive is that it's actually animated, as can be seen here. Taking a look at their snow entry makes it easier to see how a simple primitive can turn into these complex results. And as you can imagine, the node graph is quite crazy. But if you've never seen this kind of work before, you might ask yourself, how exactly does this work? How can you get a basic shape to become something completely different by using only material nodes? The answer to that is displacement, along with its counterpart vector displacement, as well as something called adaptive subdivision. Regular displacement allows vertices to move along the direction of the normal, but vector displacement allows vertices to move in any arbitrary direction, which can allow for the creation of concave areas where vertices overlap. We're going to take a quick look to see how regular displacement works with adaptive subdivision, but we will leave vector displacement for another video. What adaptive subdivision does is provide more geometry to an object depending on the location of the camera. Currently, these features only work with cycles and not Eevee. To access them, we need to go to the render settings, click on the feature set dropdown and choose experimental. To enable adaptive subdivision for an object, we need to give it the subdivision surface modifier, and then make sure the adaptive option is enabled. This option will only appear with the experimental feature set. The last thing you need to do to set this up is go to the Materials tab, create a material if you don't already have one, then scroll down to the Settings area. Under Surface, you will see a drop-down called Displacement. You want to set it to either Displacement Only or Displacement and Bump. If we check the rendered view, you will see that the object has been given more geometry than the original mesh in the basic viewport, so we know the adaptive subdivision is working properly. I'm going to select a material I prepared earlier so we can take a look at how it works. Inside of here we have a displacement node, which lets us provide the input of a basic height value and then converts it into displacement data, which we can then pass on to the material output. Notice that if I disconnect these nodes, the displacement effect disappears. Also, if I go back into the material settings and change the displacement node to bump only, the effect will also disappear. And if I go into the modifier stack and disable the adaptive setting in the subdivision surface modifier, it will prevent new geometry from being created. This is why it's necessary to use the right settings to get the displacement working as intended. I've put this file in the resources so you can experiment with the nodes and see how changing the height data will alter the creation of new geometry. So now we've taken a look at how displacement works, let's get back to looking at more Nodevember results. Now we're going to move on to looking at Hans Chu, whose work is very impressive on a technical level. They consistently push the envelope with their experiments to do a great job in demonstrating the capability of Blender's node system. Some pieces that really blew my mind include this labyrinth generator that actually manages to generate a solvable maze of variable size, and this paper airplane system which actually folds up the mesh and animates it in a very satisfying way. And just in case they weren't showing off enough, here's Suzanne being folded into a paper airplane. If you want to try your own hands at something like this, then the nodes for the system are available to view on Twitter. Inside of the demo resources, there are 3 different versions of asteroid nodes, one from Hans, which is the one seen here, as well as one from Marshall Richards and one from Jonathan Lampel. In each of these files, you will see a link to the original Twitter post from the creator. I've organized and labeled the nodes to make them easier to understand, and in some cases added some extra functionality, such as per-object randomization, which I think is useful for asteroid scenes. By experimenting with each of these, you will be able to see how the nodes can be utilized in completely different ways to achieve similar goals. Jonathan's is interesting because he uses a bump node for normal details as well as displacement to get some extra surface detailing without having to calculate a ton of extra geometry. One word of warning though, the asteroid nodes by Hans Chu are quite intensive, and rendering these will require a substantial amount of memory with the current settings, but if you've got a good enough computer for it, you can get some really realistic looking surfaces. Another one of Hans's setups that I included in the resources is the Procedural Snow, because I know this one is going to be very useful for people. Again, if you open this one up, the link to the original post is on the left, and in the material nodes I've highlighted the nodes you need to change to control the level of snow over the object. The last demo in the resources that uses nodes from Hans is what I call the Spongy volume effect. It's based on their day 28 porous entry, which has a very simple node setup, but when I saw this for the first time, I couldn't help but think that the inside must look like some kind of entangled hyper-reality, and as it turns out, yes it does. So I thought this would be a fun one to play with and share with people. Okay, now we're going to take a look at work from Mizuki Onyx, who repeatedly demonstrates their ability to present things in a way that is very visually stimulating. I'm particularly impressed by the detail on the mechanism, ornamental, weave and flower entries. You can also see some of their animated results on their Twitter feed. Now we move on to 100 Drips. I love their style and how they move between heavy stylization as well as some realistic elements, such as with the alien tribute. They've also done a significant amount of animation work with nodes. One of my favorites was definitely this holographic text. Another one was this plasma ball effect. I decided to add this one to the video resources as well because it's got quite a unique structure that mostly relies on volumetrics to display the branches of plasma. You can animate the effect by changing the value in the animation control box. You can also change the color by shifting the hue value in the master color box. Here are a few more animations from 100 Drips for your consideration. Now let's take a look at Jonathan Lampel's work. They managed to demonstrate a very impressive visual range with their entries. I love the space ones, the lava, and the patterns on both the circuit board and greeble entries. Another thing that really caught my attention was the addition of these dark marks on the snow entry, which I think really adds to the realism. Because of this, I decided to include it in the resources. Unlike the snow effect from Hands, Jonathan's nodes don't have any level control, but it's very visually interesting and I think people will find it useful. Of course, as already mentioned, Jonathan's asteroid technique has also been included. Alright, now we're going to take a look at the work of Luca Rude. As you can see, Luca has been very creative with building more complex structures out of nodes. The control over shaping they've demonstrated is really impressive. This woven basket and sword are pretty crazy, and I really love the detailing on the lava cube. They've also done some animations. Here's a holographic origami crane. And here's an impressive blooming flower animation. And then most impressive of all in my opinion is this recreation of a circuit board created entirely from nodes and a basic cube. And if you find this difficult to believe, they have also shared a video showing a selection of the nodes used to create the effect. The last person whose work we're going to take a look at in this video is Jonas Deschel, who has mostly provided animated entries throughout the month. Some of these include a nice bubbling lava effect, a procedural snowman, volumetric fish, a flower with a bee animation, a robot with laser beam eyes, and again, probably the most impressive of all in my opinion is this book animation. It opens up to reveal a map which becomes a 3D terrain that we can fly through. Again, this is all done with just a default cube and a single procedural shader. Okay, so that's all we're going to look at in this video. Just to recap, we've taken a look at some of my favorite Nodevember artworks and stopped along the way to talk about how to set up displacement materials with cycles in Blender. Available alongside this video is a package of free resources which includes my displacement demonstration, along with a collection of material techniques provided by the various artists shown throughout the video. You can of course download it completely for free from the link in the description. I recommend using the files as resources to study and experiment with how material nodes work. Remember, links to the original Twitter post for each of the techniques can be found inside of the file. If you manage to make something cool with them, then make sure to show the original artist because I'm sure they'd be interested in seeing it. And don't forget to thank them for sharing their node setups. So that's where we're going to leave it for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to follow me on social media to keep up to date, and join our Discord server to take part in discussions and get sneak previews and upcoming content. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.